the Florida Writer Podcast, a discussion about writing and other things.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Allison Nissen. Today, I am lucky enough to be with Nau Sullivan. Nancy, could you give us a 60-second elevator pitch about who you are and what you write?
Well, I'm from a huge family and I've lived in a lot of places, so I certainly have a lot of material. I was born in San Francisco and grew up in the Midwest outside of Chicago. I worked at a lot of newspapers, and after graduation, I headed to New York and worked in publishing. I ended up back at newspapers, which is really my true love, and I worked as an editor and an assignments editor for 15 years. I later taught English in Florida, Argentina, Chicago, and Mexico. And all along the way, I've been diddling with stories. I finally didn't start my first book until the 90s when my life exploded. I began to write my first book, the memoir, The Last Cadillac. After I'd gotten a divorce, my mother died. My father announced he was leaving Indiana and coming to Florida to live with me and the kids on an island. We faced a hurricane. We went to Disney World in Ireland, and we had the trip of a lifetime. I'd say that 2013 was pivotal to me. I left Chicago and I joined the Peace Corps in Mexico. And I didn't have any TV down there, so I started writing lots of stories, and I started getting published. My short stories were published in several literary magazines. And I think that was a springboard to getting my memoir published in 2016. That was my first book. I used the setting of my memoir to start my mystery. My first mystery came out last year, Saving TUNA Street. And it's actually particularly centers on the environmental challenges of my beloved Santa Maria Island. Well, Anna Maria Island, I made up a name for Anna Maria Island. My second mystery is coming out in a few weeks in the series, and the third one next June. I base all of my stories actually on places where I've lived and places I've loved. I'm back in the Midwest now near Chicago. I have a huge family here, and I love to travel.
Nancy, what an interesting start to our program. I mean, we could go in a million different directions. So I'm just going to go in the one that popped in my head the first time, which is you've taught English in all these different countries. Was there a different response to, quote unquote, the audience, this would be your classroom, with how they perceive language and how they perceive story?
That's such an interesting question. I have mainly taught kindergarten through college level, even engineering students in Mexico. And one thread I saw really throughout, whether I was in Argentina or Spain or Georgia, I actually taught at boys' prison for 5 years. All kids are basically the same. They want respect. They love to learn if given the chance, if they're given interesting material and opportunity to share. And I found similarities in the language. For instance, if they were a strong Spanish speaker, it was much easier for them to learn English. I was also an ESL teacher, so I would speak in English to all of these kids who knew so many different languages from so many different backgrounds. But they all had that in common, that they just wanted the opportunity to learn and to share with each other. All kids want respect and that opportunity, I think.
I'm a firm believer that everybody has a story to share, and that it's our responsibility as educators to be able to help people share those stories. I think stories are what tie us all together.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
So it sounds like you also write a ton of different types of genres, from memoirs, short story to mysteries. Do you have a favorite?
I think I love my mystery series. I'm actually, the first one takes place on Anna Maria Island, which I've renamed Santa Maria Island. That's a key in south of Tampa in the Gulf of Mexico. And my protagonist, Blanche Murninghan, is part-time journalist, which is what I used to be. And my publisher wants me to take her on an international bent. So I based the second mystery in Mexico City, where I served in the Peace Corps, and the third in Vietnam, where I visited a few years ago. I fell in love with Vietnam. The people and the food and the culture is fabulous. The fourth one in the series will take place in Ireland. So I think that's my love right now is doing the research and following Blanche to all these different places. I also taught in Argentina. So Blanche is going to Argentina. And I spent my junior year in college in Spain. So of course, Blanche is going to have to spend some time making paella and traveling around Spain too. So I've got some plans there. The memoir was particularly exciting for me because it really just set me off on the whole adventure of writing a book and trying to get it right. It was a family drama that only took place over a few years' time. I saw the beginning of it, I saw the end of it, and it took me several years to get through that and get it published, but I'm quite proud of it. It won a couple of awards. Also, the novel, I've just had the one novel published, which is based on my experience teaching in the boys' prison, the boys of Alpha Block. That came out in April. And it's about a woman who teaches in a boys' prison, and she gets caught up in their escape plan. But I didn't exactly have the escape adventure planned in my teaching experience, but a lot of the things that I've included in this book, these are things that the kids really did say to me, and adventures and backgrounds based on essays and poems and things that they wrote to me over the years. So I don't know. I think the project that I'm working on in the moment, I think, is always my favorite because I get so caught up in the research and the writing. I love the research and the editing aspects of writing, fortunately.
Well, Nancy, you sound like you're a fearless individual. You have had a multitude of experiences in multiple different cultures, and we're not just talking language and country, but actually working in a prison, being in the Peace Corps. What is the bravest thing you have to do with your writing career?
Wow. I love to start a book, but it's difficult for me to end it. Especially with the mysteries, I have to wrap up all of those loose ends and make a whole cloth out of the story. When I sit down to write, I can sort of see the beginning and I can see the end. I'm a seat of the pants writer mostly, but along the way, I will outline or fill in with research details, that sort of thing, make up quotes as I go along. I really get into the character. I try to be in that character's head. Right now, I'm working on the third mystery that takes place in Vietnam, and I came up with this expat who owns a bar in Saigon, and he's a big, huge, blonde-haired motorcycle guy, and I don't know where he came from. But once I got into the story, I knew that Blanche had to meet a character who was very opposite of her and would help her in her adventure in Vietnam. So I really do. It's daunting at first to try to make myself let go, but once I'm into the story, I do. I just have to let go, and I put the craziest stuff down on the page, and I have to go back and edit, of course, a lot of it, but that's really the challenge to me, is to get it out as much as I can and then go back and really tune it up, so to speak.
Do you have an editing process?
My editing process is probably the type of editing process that is frowned upon by many editors, but I kind of compare it to riding a bicycle. I will write and write. I'll try to write a couple thousand, 1,500 to 2,000 words a day. The next day, I will go back and read over what I wrote the day before and edit it. And then I kind of get the wheels going and I can move forward to the next 1,500 words or so. I know that many writers and editors caution writers to just get it out, tell the story, keep going. And I try to do that, but I really do need to know that what I have done is a pretty good basis for where I'm going. So I sort of edit to answer your question. I don't know if I'm answering this question correctly, but I sort of edit as I go along. And then when the whole story is finished, I read it over from beginning to end. It takes me days and days and days of editing. And there are still things that we'll get through, but I do have a wonderful editor at my publishing house, and she's very patient with me, so we get it done.
I will tell you that I have spoken with so many authors and editors and publishers, and nobody has the same process. So everybody, you just have to find out what works for you.
Yes.
There's people that will write like a cliffhanger at the end of each page, so they know where they start the next day. And then there's those, I'm the type that has to go back and edit as I go, because I don't want to forget where I've been. So otherwise, I'll go out on some tree limb somewhere, and I'll just be hanging out over the lake and won't have a clue where I am. So it's for me, it's so important to actually, continually go back and reference. But I applaud those that can just sort of write the whole thing all at once. So I'm a little bit more like you with my own editing process. And I have to admit, I love the research, but I often don't put the research that I come across into my writing. Are you able to, when you do the research, are you really able to form a picture in your head?
Yes, the research really helps. More than anything, it refreshes where I've been, because I am writing about places where I've traveled or lived or taught or studied. So, for instance, the mystery series happens 2002, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So for the Vietnam book, I wasn't in Vietnam that long, but I take lots and lots of notes and pictures. I got a guidebook for that year. It took me some time to find a 2003 photos guidebook, but it really helped with menu and street addresses and maps and that sort of thing. I do make up a lot of names, but my characters like to eat and they like to visit places. So I like to add a lot of that color. And sometimes things happen at the dinner table. So I will go back and look up menus and restaurants in Vietnam to see what they're serving and what she would order for wine. She's a big beer drinker. She loves beer. And Vietnam and Mexico have fabulous beers. So of course I have all of that intertwined into the writing. But I really do read. I'll read for months, like this Vietnam thing. I spent all summer reading tons of books about Vietnam. And of course, a lot of that does not get into the mystery, but it gives me the ambience. It gives me the flavor for the place that I'm going to write.
My best advice that you just offered, or my favorite advice that you just offered, was to find the guidebook from years past to help set your present. That is a fantastic idea. I imagine that could be a challenge, but it could also be fun, searching different websites and going to old bookstores and just getting out there and being able to put your hands on something like that. It's just a great idea.
Yeah, that was really fun. And I have to thank Amazon for that. It's pretty easy to find, if you go through their listings, you can usually come up with pretty close to what you need.
So one thing you mentioned earlier was that Blanche is going to be making paella.
Oh, yeah.
So do you have a favorite recipe? This is not part of our rapid fire questions, but I'm just really curious.
Oh, my family begs me to make paella. I've made it for years and years and years. I have 4 paella pans. One travels with me when I go to Florida. I did go to school in Madrid, and my roommate in college lived in Valencia. So we even went to Valencia and cooked it on the beach. That's the original place, the birthplace of paella. Actually, the Spanish will tell you that. It's cooked over an open fire on the beach. And I always put lots of chorizo and chicken and shrimp and lots of different items on it, artichokes and peas and red peppers and things like that. And you have to use short grain rice, of course, and lots of olive oil and garlic. But it's such a fun dish to make, and it's an automatic party winner. All you need is a big paella and you've got a party.
That's right. I've been to many beach resorts, and they will have a 5 o'clock paella party, and you always gather around and you grab a plate and you grab a spoonful of paella and you just go to town.
Yes, that's great.
Nancy, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, I have a wonderful website that was put together. I did not do the website, believe me. But I have a contact email address on that website. It's www.nancynausullivan.com. I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. My Gmail address is thelastcadillac@gmail.com. The Last Cadillac is one word. I love to hear from readers with their comments and suggestions. And was not really a social media buff, but I'm trying to get more into it because I really like to follow what people are reading. I love BookBub too. I love to give book recommendations on BookBub. So I'm out there. You can find me. I'd love to hear from you.
That's all fantastic information. Are you ready to switch to our rapid fire questions?
Surely.
Now, I came up with these questions before we started chatting. So the first question I have is, what's on your bucket list?
Oh, well, Australia's #1, numero uno. I've been reading Jane Harper. I don't know if you know Jane Harper and Leanne Moriarty. They're both Australian writers, and they have written such evocative material, especially Jane Harper. She doesn't write light, fluffy stuff, but it's so moody and so evocative. I would love to go to Australia.
What's one experience everyone should have?
Zip lining.
Zip lining. Wow.
Zip lining.
Okay. That is probably
only one time, because you will wet your pants and have a heart attack. My beloved cousin, Kathy Gaffigan, talked me into it in Costa Rica, and I'm still having nightmares, but she's a formidable adventuress, and she talked me into it. I'm glad I did it, but I only will do it one time.
I love that. I imagine it's a little like parasailing. So
very frightening.
And what is your favorite season?
Oh, I really love fall. I love autumn. I lived in Florida for 12 years and missed it quite a bit. So and in Mexico, of course, Mexico was not too many changes of season there either. But I forgot how wonderful that crisp, crunchy feeling of leaves under your feet and bright maple colors and the last of the roses and the flowers and the football games. And there's nothing better than autumn in New York. I know there's a song about that, but there just isn't anything better than autumn in New York. It's true.
Nancy Nau Sullivan, thank you so much for stopping by.
Oh, thank you, Allison. It's been really fun. I loved every minute of it. Thank you for inviting me.
You all have been listening to another edition of the Florida Writer Podcast with your host, Allison Nissen. Allison out. Nancy Nau Sullivan is a writer of memoir, mystery, and a novel about a woman who teaches in a boys' prison. The novel, The Boys of the Alpha Block, was published in April. Saving TUNA Street, the first in a mystery series, is nominated for Best Mystery of 2020 at Foreword Reviews. Second in the series, Trouble Down, Mexico Way, launches June 29th, 2021. Nancy promises to take her amateur sleuth, Blanche Murninghan, to Vietnam next, then Ireland, Argentina, and Spain. Her memoir, The Last Cadillac, won 2 Eric Hoffer Awards in 2016. A former newspaper journalist, Nancy taught English in Argentina, in the Peace Corps in Mexico, and at a boys' prison in Florida. For more information about Nancy, find her on the web at nancynausullivan.com. Learn, network, and grow at the 20th Annual Florida Writers Conference, October 14th through 17th, 2021. There's a Florida Writer Youth Conference, October 16th. Make your mark with the Florida Writers Association. For more information, visit us at floridawriters.org.